Just 24 hours after she was born in this room, Maria Teresa Goretti was taken to the local parish priest of her village in Corinaldo, Italy, and baptized in this baptismal font. She was the third child of Luigi and Assunta Goretti, and would become the youngest canonized saint in the Catholic Church. Luigi Goretti came from a traditional Catholic family, was intelligent and hardworking. Assunta Carlini was an orphan, made uncommonly strong from a childhood full of sorrow and deprivation. The two met while working side by side in the vineyards of Corinaldo, a medieval city 20 miles from the Adriatic coast. They were married here in the Church of St. Francis on February 25, 1886, where Maria Goretti was later baptized and confirmed. The newlyweds received only one wedding gift, this picture of the Madonna and Child. It hangs over the bed in the room where Maria was born. The family lived in this little stone farmhouse as sharecroppers for the landowner Rocci. Their peasant home was a simple one, no plumbing or electricity, only the necessities. Luigi farmed corn, wheat, and grapes on this small hillside plot behind the house. It was a harsh existence. Half of everything a sharecropper harvested or earned went to pay the property. Their first child died in infancy, but they soon had 4 small, healthy children, Maria and her 3 brothers. Little did these humble peasants realize that God was preparing a saint in their midst.
She passed her infancy like all the other children. She received her education only at home from my husband and me, the same education which we imparted equally to the other children so they would grow up to be good Christians. Up to the time we were at Corinaldo, she was always good, but I did not observe anything extraordinary in her behavior.
Maria was a slender and graceful child with hazel eyes and chestnut hair. Goretti biographers believe that only 2 photographs exist of Maria Goretti. The girl in the center of this photo wearing the bandana is said to be the young saint. Maria is also seen in this photo with her mother and sisters Teresa and Ercilia. As a young girl, she would often come here to the Santuario dell'Incancellara, or church within the gates, to pray. The small chapel was less than a half-mile from her home. She visited the shrine frequently, especially in the month of May, to venerate the image of Mary, Queen of Peace. The Gorettis shared the plight of most poor Italian families at the end of the 19th century. In those days, 1 in 3 Italian families emigrated. Maria's parents bartered sentimental ties to Corinaldo in hopes of building a better life in Pagliano, Italy, an agricultural area closer to Rome. At dawn on October 28, 1897, when Maria was 7 years old, the Gorettis waved farewell to their beloved hometown Corinaldo. As they boarded the train at the seaside town of Ancona, Maria held the family's most treasured possession tucked beneath her arm, the picture of the Madonna. Pagliano was a step up for the Gorettis, although not by much. Luigi was hired as a tenant farmer by a large landowner. Soon after their arrival, they were expecting their 5th child. It was around this time Luigi began a working relationship with another peasant family, Giovanni Serenelli and his 16-year-old son, Alessandro. The partnership would later prove to be a tragic decision. Giovanni Serenelli was an abusive, hard-drinking drifter who sharecropped from place to place. No photographs were ever taken of him. Before arriving in Pagliano, Giovanni and his 17-year-old son, Alessandro, lived and worked among the sailors on the shores of the Adriatic. Young Alessandro's upbringing left much to be desired. Tragically, as a young boy, his mother tried to drown him in a well, a misery that would scar him for life. Eventually, the landowner at Pagliano dismissed the Serenellis. Because of his working relationship with them, Luigi Goretti was forced to leave as well. Once again, the necessity of emigration was apparent. Because of his financial predicament, Luigi reluctantly continued working with the Serenellis, and the 2 families moved on together. Through some friends, they heard of an opportunity in Le Ferriere, only an hour away on the estate of Count Mazzoleni. The Goretti's new home was dismal. It was called the Pontine Marshes, or the Swamps. It was Italy's wasteland, consisting of uncultivated marshes, isolated cottages, herds of animals, bushes, and musty, foul-smelling air. The two families arrived in Le Ferriere on a cold February night in 1899. They climbed the steep staircase to their new dwelling, the upper floor of this abandoned cheese factory. Maria's family and the Serenellis had separate living quarters, but they shared a large common kitchen and the same stairway. The Cimarellis, who would later testify for Maria's canonization, lived in the house next to the cheese factory. They were witnesses to Maria's daily life and temperament.
I used to see her every day as she passed by the door to get water from the well, but she never stopped. She was a serious girl. She went and came quickly and busily, and there was no reproach when we nicknamed her the little old lady. Teresa Cimarelli.
A year after their arrival in Le Ferriere, it looked as if life was improving for the Gorettis. But the long hours and back-breaking labor finally caught up with Luigi. After contracting malaria, he collapsed one day in the field. His body was quickly overcome by chills and fever. The fierce illness took only 10 days to run its fatal course. On May 6, 1900, Count Mazzoleni ordered his chief of personnel to prepare a coffin. It was needed for Luigi Goretti. He was 41.
If at times I shouted at her, it was because worries over the farm work made me irritable. Maria accepted the shouting with calm and continued the housework without any sulkiness. She had a generous heart towards me and towards her brothers and sisters. In serving the meals, she ensured that they were satisfied before she served herself.
Maria would wake every day at dawn in this room and pray as she dressed herself. She would then awaken the other children and help them wash and dress, and then cook everyone breakfast. Once a week, she baked fresh bread for the family in this bread oven outside the home. She would often wear her rosary around her wrist to make it easier to pray while working. In all respects, she dedicated herself to housework and the smaller children.
Maria was always modest and reserved. We all liked her, and deep down we admired her. She was more religious than the rest of us. I was just a girl then, and would that I followed her example, but at that age most of us are senseless. We scarcely know what we are doing. We seek pleasure and popularity. We permit ourselves to be distracted from better things. Teresa Cimarelli.
I know that she used to do the housework with energy and diligence, and that she was most obedient to her mother. I have always marveled at her gravity in speaking and her grown-up manner. Filippo Vadi.
By the time Maria was 9, she was going to the market in Nettuno for her mother. After selling her eggs, vegetables, and doves, she would then do the family shopping at the market. It was on these trips to Nettuno that she always visited the shrine of Our Lady of Grace and received her strength before the beautiful statue of the Madonna. At 10 years old, she was keenly aware of the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. Mama Assunta recalls Maria's constant begging to attend catechism lessons at a teacher's home in Campomorto. Maria would hike the considerable distance, rain or shine, to prepare herself for the sacrament. Although she was unable to read or write, she memorized all her prayers from the catechism, then taught them to the younger children. After the death of Luigi, as Maria prepared for her first Holy Communion, the Goretti's coexistence with the Serenellis became increasingly strained, particularly between Maria and Alessandro. The coarse-minded Alessandro made shameful advances toward Maria, which she always sternly rejected. He threatened to kill her if she ever told anyone.
At the death of my husband, neither Alessandro nor his father showed any interest, nor did they give us any consolation.
On Sunday, June 16, 1901, with a veil borrowed from another peasant family, Maria Goretti received her first Holy Communion from Padre Basilio Morganti in the Campomorto Church. It was the feast of Corpus Christi. Padre Morganti's message to the children, before administering the sacrament, was purity at all costs. Of the 12 girls and 2 boys making their first communion that day, Maria was the youngest, but clearly the most spiritually prepared. Padre Morganti was astonished by the depth of her spirituality and her response to one of his questions.
He, like pastors or Italian pastors this day, would sit down in a chair, and each one of the students would come and thank him for the sacrament. And he would say, "Now, what did you ask Jesus when he was so close to you?" And each boy would generally ask for a good commission in the army, or a chance to get some education, or whatever they were interested in. Each of the girls was saying that they wanted to have a nice husband, or a healthy family, and things like that, or a good farm. And when Marie came, he said, "I suppose you asked the same as your classmates?" And she said, "Not exactly." And he said, "Well, what did you ask for?" And she said, "To receive Jesus again." He said, "Si, capito. But what did you personally ask for?" And that's when she said, "Well, Father, this was the happiest moment of my life. I couldn't think of anything nicer at the time to receive again." And he said, "If that's what you really asked, you may receive next Sunday, the following Sunday, and the Feast of the Precious Blood." And she was just overjoyed, and that, to us, doesn't make sense. But remembering she was receiving. In those days, even nuns did not receive daily.
In Our Lady of the Annunciation Church, where Maria received First Communion, is a painting behind the altar depicting the Annunciation. Ironically, the angel in the picture holds a bouquet of lilies in her hand, the flower later used to symbolize the life of Maria. Today, proof of the numerous miracles worked by the youngest saint in the church adorn the chapel walls.